prepare for a rude awakening.
Shalom. This is Michael Rood at Ophel Gardens on Mount Moriah in Jerusalem. It was upon this mountain that the Feast of Hanukkah was initiated a little more than 160 years before the birth of the Messiah. We are going to consider the significance of Hanukkah and what it means to the followers of the Messiah now and in the future. One of the most successful advertising campaigns in the history of Christian marketing has swept the English-speaking world with 4 letters and a question mark. The 4 letters, WWJD. What would Jesus do? In my experience, I have found that few who wear that popular slogan on t-shirts, jewelry, and ball caps actually open the scriptures to find out what Jesus would do. WWJD has become a catchphrase for popular Christian situation ethics. We ask, what would Jesus do? And then attempt to imagine what he would do if he were in our situation. If we genuinely want to know what Messiah Yeshua would do, don't you think that it is best to study what he did? In the book of Luke, it records that Yeshua's custom was to go into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and read the Torah and the prophets. In the Gospel of John, we see that Yeshua went up to Jerusalem for the Feast of Dedication, or Hanukkah, also known as the Feast of Lights. He proclaimed that he was the light of the world, the literal fulfillment of the Feast of Hanukkah. His mother Miriam actually conceived on the last day of the Feast of Lights, and Yeshua was born 9 months later in a sukkah or manger on the first day of the Feast of Succot. Hanukkah and Christmas both occur at the same time of the year. Hanukkah falls on Kislev 25 on the biblical calendar, and Christmas occurs on December 25th on the pagan calendar. When Hanukkah originated, Kislev 25 and December 25th transpired on the same day, as it occasionally does. But if we ask WWJD, why do few that wear the slogan recognize that Yeshua kept the Feast of Hanukkah rather than celebrate Christmas? He had a choice, and so do you. Join us in the Lester Summerall Television Studios, where this multimedia presentation on the prophecies in the Feast of the Lord was recorded by the Prophecy Club. This is Bible Prophecy 201. Now, episode 21 in the 26-part series on the prophecies in the Feast of the Lord, Hanukkah, deliverance from pagan sun god worship. Kislev 25 is the beginning of the Feast of Hanukkah. Hanukkah in Hebrew means dedication. This is the Feast of Hanukkah, and at first you might say that the Feast of Hanukkah, also called the Feast of Lights, is something we don't read in Leviticus. Is this not just a Jewish feast, whereas all the other feasts are feasts of the Lord that we have been speaking of? And at first you might think that way. But then, as we see in the Gospel of John, in the 10th chapter, it says that it was wintertime. And it was the Feast of Hanukkah, dedications, and Yeshua went up to the feast. Whenever it uses the terminology to go up or he went up to the feast, it is a legal terminology that was specified right in the Torah that 3 times a year you must go up. And you must go up to Jerusalem, not any place else. You go up to Jerusalem, not Mount Gerizim, not to your own religious establishment, wherever it may be, but you go up to Jerusalem. Why up to Jerusalem? Because it is at Jerusalem that all of these feasts will be fulfilled. And the Feast of Hanukkah started out this way. It was 168 BC in which Antiochus Epiphanes, a Greek general, came in and conquered Jerusalem, and he occupied the city of Jerusalem and the surrounding area with the Grecian army. When he did that, he went up on the Temple Mount, and he then slaughtered a sow, and he sacrificed it and roasted it on the brazen altar.
defiling the altar. And then he set up a statue of Zeus, the Greek sun god, in the temple and proclaimed Zeus to be God. Zeus, the Greek sun god, and he did it on Zeus's birthday, December 25th. That year it also happened to be Kislev 25. Now, this doesn't even sound strange at all to the Jewish nation, because we know that when we were in Egypt, that Ra, the Egyptian sun god, his birthday was December 25th. Tammuz, the Babylonian sun god, December 25th. And Greek sun god, December 25th. And Mithra, the Roman sun god, December 25th. So we all know that these things really came out of Babylon, the worship of Nimrod and Babylonian sun god worship, and then through the Tower of Babel, then they were spread throughout that part of the world. And so it's not anything that's out of the ordinary for us to understand these things. So Greek sun god, Zeus, born on December 25th, that was Kislev 25 that year. Now what happened is that Judah Maccabees and his brethren, against insurmountable odds, overthrew the Greek occupational armies, overthrew the Greeks, and it was Kislev 25, exactly 3 years later to the very day, that they then got up on the Temple Mount. They broke down that altar which had been defiled by the Greeks, and then they broke down the statue of Zeus in the temple, went into the holy place, and when 1 day's supply of kosher oil, they then resupplied the menorah in the temple. They lit the menorah. That became the Feast of Dedication, the Feast of Lights, because that 1 day supply of oil, according to tradition, then stayed lit for 8 days. And 8 days is the duration of each one of the feasts. Even the spring feast, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, is 7 days in duration, but during that feast, on the Bakgrunnen, we begin counting to the 50th day, and that takes us to the final fulfillment of the spring feast. That makes it an 8-day feast in its final duration. Also, the Feast of Succot is a 7-day feast, and then there is another day added onto the end. It's called the last great day, and that's a high Sabbath as well. 8 is the number of new beginnings. And then Hanukkah is a feast of 8-day duration, and the 8th day, again, is the new beginning. So Hanukkah, the Feast of Lights, when the Messiah went up to it, he said, I am the light of the world. I am the shamash, the light that lights every man that comes into the world. He literally is the fulfillment of this feast in the positive. But there are also other shadow pictures embedded in this that you will see, that Antiochus Epiphanes is a picture of the anti-Messiah, the Antichrist in the last days, and you'll see how that fits. So each year, December 25th, which is the date of the child mass and the child sacrifice and the worship of the pagan sun gods, that's what it's been throughout all history. And then to have Hanukkah fall at the same time. Why? Because they are literally intertwined with each other, because it's the same event. Every year, Hanukkah is a celebration of deliverance from pagan sun god worship. It lasts for 8 days, and when you participate in the Feast of Rededication, and you rededicate your life to strip yourself from all of the filthy garments of pagan sun god worship, and the tree, the decoration of the penis of Ra with the gold and silver testicles, which has become very popular in America, with the Christmas tree and putting gold and silver balls on it. This is something that goes back thousands and thousands of years before the birth of Messiah. And when you strip yourself of all of the paganism and you follow the Messiah and rededicate your life, that Feast of Hanukkah is a most precious celebration. And we're going to see that it is a shadow picture of good things yet to come.